Good afternoon, everybody, and we are live on the air. It is currently about 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Good afternoon to everybody who might be listening in Washington, D.C., as that was a great win last night for the Nationals. And just what a come-from-behind win. They're down 3-0 and then 3-1. And then Juan Soto, who is 20 years old, lines a single into right field that certainly had tied the game. And then Trent Grisham, who wasn't much older, 22, couldn't quite make the play. It took a bad hop, bounced by him, and the Nats took the lead. And for the first time in Nationals franchise history, they have won a playoff series. Yes, the Nationals have won a playoff series. And they're going to the divisional round to play the Dodgers in Los Angeles. And the ballpark was going crazy. I'm sure the streets afterwards were going crazy. I'll tell you one thing, and I'm going to be biased right now. You can see it right now. I am wearing my Nationals hat right now, and let me stand up for you for a minute. If you look closely enough, it's pretty easy to say I'm also wearing my Stanley Cup Champions t-shirt from 2 years ago when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup. And once again in Washington, there could be another opportunity to have a championship team. So yes, I'm here to talk baseball, but from right now, I am being biased. I am being a Washington homer right now. Just like Grant and Danny might be on 106.7 The Fan, who I listen to. Probably one of my favorite radio shows out there. But yes, the Nationals, if you want to say it, are wild card champions. They celebrated with champagne last night. And the other day, not to mention, but I must admit that Stanley Cup was a year ago. But the reason why I was wearing it today is the Caps are back today. They're playing the Blues. This is the exact same time as the American League wild card game as well. But listen, I'm proud of those two teams. And again, I said this on air when I did my very first video. The two teams that are my most favorite teams in all of sports are the Washington Nationals and Washington Capitals. They're probably the two teams that I probably like watching the most on TV as a fan, and probably the two teams I probably root for. Probably the hardest. Yes, I kind of like the Georgia Bulldogs. I do like them. Since I'm right in live in Athens, Georgia, I do go to their games, so I root for the Dogs. I kind of like the Ravens. I do like the Ravens. If they're in the playoffs, I'd root for them. So there you go. The Ravens were more of a challenge. So anyways, I was proud of the Nationals last night. What they did, let me tell you something. I'm going to be honest. I was going crazy last night. And I'm already starting to see. Maybe this team is different. Maybe this is a team that goes to the World Series this year. Or beats the Dodgers. Does something different. Since whatever it was, they could not win. And this was like those game fives. This was a do or die game where if they didn't win, their season was over. If they did win, they were going to advance. Now, the other series were in the divisional series. 2012, that was brutal. I can remember that very well. It was almost 7 years ago. I was crying after that game. I was 15 at the time. I was in 8th grade. I was crying. I was upset in bed afterwards. I could not go to sleep. It was probably one of the worst losses I've ever experienced of a sports fan. At all, probably. That was brutal. Then they lose game 5 in Washington 4 years later in 2016 to the Dodgers. And the very next year, they lose Yet another game 5 for the Cubs. That one was almost as bad. Since the Cardinals won, they had a 6-0 lead, just how it happened. It was quite very similar. Now, I've grown up over the years, so if the Nationals would have lost yesterday, yes, it would have been disappointing. I know the guys in the clubhouse on the team, they would have been disappointed for all they did all this work, and now it's over. But same thing with the Brewers. So is this Nationals team meant to go on a deep run? We'll talk about that more tomorrow as we do the ALDS preview. But look, this is going to be my good luck look. Any video, whether I'm talking about the Nationals or not, until the Nationals are eliminated, I'm going to wear this exact Nationals hat and sunglasses. Since I just went with the look yesterday, never worn sunglasses before on air, and I did that yesterday, and it turned out it was good luck to the Nationals. So as long as the Nationals are in the playoffs, I will be wearing this look while recording podcast. Whether if I happen to move to an indoor studio or not, this will be the look that I will possess during these videos. So it was a great win. Now the difference is, this win compared to those Game 5 losses is, they're in the same position they were in years past. They played in 4 division series. They're in the division series for the 5th time. Yet, unlike in years past, 2012, they're favorites. 2014, they're heavy favorites against the Giants. 2016 and 17, it was in their ballpark, so yes, they were favorites. I definitely thought that team was better than the 2017 Cubs. 16 Dodgers, I think they were. I mean, definitely going into the series, they were. Certainly had a slightly better regular season. This time around, they are underdogs. They are heavy underdogs playing against the Dodgers in Los Angeles, so that's different this time around. And there won't be a Game 5 in Washington, but there could be a Game 4 in Washington where they have a chance to close out. So this team is different. They're more underdog types. The Braves are clearly a better team. They won 97 games. Nationals won 93. And yes, they won 8 straight games to end the regular season, and they were rolling. And that 8-game winning streak almost came to an end, almost a season-ending winning streak right there. And they won. So what was it feeling like at the ballpark? Obviously, it was electric. I saw it on TV. I could have a sense of what it was like. Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know what it was like, but for the Nationals, that is 1 down, 11 to go. So they're in the tournament. They're playing the Dodgers. So we'll see what happens. So I want to talk about the game itself now. So the game itself. Scherzer's on the mound, pitching. And this was a debate. I talked about this at length yesterday. Do you want Scherzer or Strasburg pitching? I was okay with Scherzer. And then Yasmani Grandal, second batter of the game after Trent Grisham walked, who, again, will be a big discussion later on, towards the very end of the game, as we just mentioned. Who I just happened to look up Grandal. I knew he had a lot of playoff experience from all those years on the Dodgers, the last 4 years. And was 8 for 75 career in the playoffs. And he hit a home run off Scherzer, the second batter of the game. Hits a home run. And all of a sudden, the ballpark, which was electric, I was waiting all day for this game, to be honest. I did multiple things. I listened to Grant and Danny on 106.7, my favorite DC sports radio show. 10 to 2, Monday through Friday is when you can hear the show. I'm giving them free advertising. And then on, and I watched my Capitals DVD. All day I had those thoughts of what's going to happen. Just thinking about it. It kind of reminded me of that day. Game 7 was Capitals versus Hurricanes. I was kind of having the same thoughts. Like, wow. This has been quite a run all season long. It's been a really fun regular season. Yes, there's been moments they're up and down, but unlike the Capitals, where I was thinking about the parade and stuff and everything that happened throughout the journey, this time around, I was thinking, wow, this has been quite a run. I was thinking throughout the day, well, it could be all over tonight, or they could be world champions, or they could be in the World Series. We just don't know. And thinking from my perspective, I'm sure there's fans in the ballpark that waited all day for this. We're so fired up, we're there, and then all of a sudden it's 2-0. And then not that long after that, Eric Thames hits the home run in the second inning, and it's 3-0. And the air of the stadium, and really, I was thinking, here we go again. All the things that had happened, everything. Here we go again. Now, granted, it was the first and second inning, so there was plenty of time to get back into it. And one interesting thing about Scherzer, especially the first batter of the first inning, he's throwing 98-99. This is about as hard as I've ever seen him throw. Now, granted, it was a playoff game. He probably had extra adrenaline. He probably had the adrenaline to throw 98-99, something that nowadays, in the regular season is usually 95, 96, so mid-90s. And then occasionally at the end of the game, emptying out the bullets, 97. So is that close? And you don't think of Scherzer, someone who throws 98-99 regularly. I mean, he can do it occasionally, obviously. So clearly he had a lot of adrenaline going through. I think he was fired up and ready to go for sure. And with that home run, and granted, I talked about this a lot yesterday. If Scherzer gives up a home run, or if something like that happens, where a walk here, a home run there, whatever, it's 2-0, whatever, that's 2 runs, I thought that's how the Nationals were going to lose the game. And for the longest time, that appeared to be what was going on. So Scherzer, if I'd give him a grade, I'd give him a C+. Yet, he struggled to get through 5 innings. And if this is the regular season, maybe you say, okay, we'll just let him go. And maybe Scherzer can be his usual self and go 6-7 innings and have a nice start. Get double-digit strikeouts. But in this situation, it was clear he was running out of energy. It was a home run away. The Brewers were a 3-run home run away from being up 6-1 or whatever. The Brewers had opportunities to break the game open. And they didn't do that. So now going back to the debate, whether it's Scherzer or Strasburg. Strasburg last night it was a bullpen effort. It was a 3-inning relief effort. Great. His fastball was about 96. I thought his best pitch, he did get a strikeout on the changeup. But his curveball, it seemed like 82, 83. It was so great. You know what it kind of looked like? It kind of looked like a slider, the way it was moving. I mean, it was just so good. I've seen his curveball hundreds of times, probably, if not thousands of times over the years. And the way it was moving, I mean, it was really exceptional. I mean, it was just really exceptional how it was moving. And it's unbelievable how, in that moment, who again was a starter for years and years, was basically trained to be a starter, and in that moment comes in as a relief pitcher, comes in the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And that's what we heard about. If Scherzer doesn't quite have it, which he didn't have it, he was nowhere near 100%. And he came in the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Basically since they did not trust any portion of their bullpen to come in and pitch, since it could have been broken open right there. And you know what? Sure, maybe he was scheduled to pitch game 1 in Los Angeles. But Davey Martinez, who always says 1-0, you can't worry about that right then and there. Oh, how are you going to get to the next game? How are you going to get to that game if you're worried about it already? You just focus on now and right now. Don't worry about the next game. And Strasburg kept them in the game. And granted, it was just a small... And what we saw from Chicago in the playoffs, he picked up right where he left off. Gave them those 3 good innings, kept them in the game, gave them an opportunity. And for the Brewers, on their side of things, I mean, whatever script they had, I talked about at length. Brandon Woodruff's going to go 3 innings. He ended up going 4, which that script worked. Woodruff was kind of similar. He's throwing in the first inning, especially early in the game. I think he threw a few sliders, but pretty much his fastball all game. 98, 99, even touched 100 a few times. Again, it could have been adrenaline in the playoffs and knowing that he wasn't going to go. You know, yes, he is a starter. He's an all-star starter this year, actually. But we knew that he was going to be kind of a go only 2 or 3 innings. When ended up going 4, that was his max effort. That was all he had that night. He did give up the home run to Trey Turner, which that's what got the Nationals back in the game, which turned out to be critical later on. And then in came Brent Suter. So it was kind of a change of things right there. You go from Brandon Woodruff was throwing 98, 99 to then Brent Suter, who was throwing 88, mid-80s, which was kind of remarkable. I mean, I don't know how he did it this year. He came back from Tommy John in September, basically came back, gave them 20 innings, gave them about 2 innings per game this year. His ERA going into that game in the regular season was 0.49. So about 1 run per 20 innings. He came in, obviously labored that inning. The Nationals really made him work, and then on to the 6th and 7th was Drew Pomeranz, who he's kind of a very interesting story this year. Since last year in Boston, he was a starter on the Red Sox. Had been there about 2.5 years. Was really kind of left off the playoff rosters, and you remember that 18-inning game where I'm trying to remember who started. I think it was Rick Porcello. The Red Sox used their entire bullpen, and they Nathan Eovaldi, who they asked to go 6 innings, went out for a 7th inning, pitch innings 12 through 18. Drew Pomeranz was the last guy on the bench. They did not even use him in that game, despite everyone that they had to use in that game 3. So he's probably one of the least valuable. Wasn't thought of much on a Red Sox World Series team. Goes to San Francisco as kind of a starter, and then comes to Milwaukee and is kind of that lefty bullpen guy. Moves to the bullpen. He's throwing really hard. Really revitalized himself. Was throwing 97. That very nice, whatever it was, slurve, curveball, slider, look something like that. Went through 2 innings. And now in the 8th inning, it's time for Josh Hader. And with Josh Hader, one of the best strikeout guys in baseball, gets something like 16, 17 strikeouts per 9 innings. So what that means is he's going to get about 2 strikeouts per inning on average. So if there's a game where he doesn't strike out any in an inning, or strikes out 1 in an inning, he's going to strike out 3 the next inning. Basically, he's going to get, so it's a short distance reliever type guy. So was asking for the 6-out save. And my initial thought was, just again, if the Brewers scored first, since their game plan, it worked. It mostly worked. But if the Brewers score first, then they win. They win. That was my thought. And then it was 3-0. Woodruff was pitching well. Bullpen worked. Suter, Pomeranz worked. And they had so many different weapons they could have used. And then comes Hader, and you're thinking, that's it. Season's over. Or very likely over. Since they were down their last 6 outs. And pretty quickly early on, up comes, I think Robles struck out. And then it was time for, and I'm trying to remember what happened. So pinch hitter, I think Brian Dozier got out some way or whatever, and then I think Trey Turner. So there's 2 outs since it was pinch hitter and then Trey Turner. I think there was back-to-back strike, or no. Someone in between. Michael A. Taylor pinch hit. Okay, so he pinch hit. And there was a play. So there's 1 out, Michael A. Taylor's up, where they pinch hit. And the ball comes inside. I think he worked it to 3-2. The ball hit him kind of in the wrist-hand area. And it was bang-bang. It was 50-50. Did it hit him first or did the bat first? And it was a very close call. It went into review, and I don't think there's any evidence that he could overturn the call. I think looked like was in pain or whatever. So he's on first, which my thought is, why is Michael A. Taylor batting? Who you're asking him, and granted, everyone would have trouble facing Josh Hader, I would think. Just that dominant, but this is Michael A. Taylor, who was, as recently as 2 years ago, was a huge part of the playoff team, of why there was a Game 5 in Washington. And if they would have won that series, it would have been a big reason why. Well, lost playing time last year. Basically spent most of this year in Double-A Harrisburg, and in the minor leagues, was sent back down in the minors. And this is someone who was established in the major leagues for 3 or 4 years prior to this year anyways. And had very few at-bats this year down the stretch. And all of a sudden you're asking him to hit in the playoff game. Gets hit. And then Trey Turner strikes out. So there's 2 outs, and then here comes Ryan Zimmerman, who at this point in time is basically a pinch hitter, might get a start here and there late in the regular season, knowing they needed a runner on base. I think was fooled on a slider fairly early on, and he gets jammed inside. This is the important part of the at-bat. The highlight of that bat. Gets jammed and lines a single into the outfield. There's 2 outs at this point in time. You're wondering, is anyone going to catch it? Is RC going to catch it? Is Hero going to catch it? Is Kane going to catch it? Drops in no man's land. And a broken bat single. Something they needed, a break like that. Soft contact. Something that maybe, if it's different, would have been an out. Maybe would have been jammed or whatever. That's all they needed. And Anthony Rendon, who this possibly could be his last at bat in Washington. He's going to be a free agent. His contract's up. Comes up to throw the pitch, and he ends up working a walk. And then here's Juan Soto, who we highlighted at the beginning of the show. If you watch the TBS post-game show, that was shown over and over again. If you watch MLB Network post-game, that was shown over and over again. I think it was a 3-pitch at-bat. I'm trying to remember what happened. I think he got a fastball, maybe that missed way away, maybe fouled off a pitch. And I know the 3rd pitch of the bat was a fastball right down the middle. Tie game right there. And then, which I'm sure many of you listeners have heard of this play many, many times, especially if you watch the game and certainly the post-game coverage. Grisham can't. I think what it was, I'm trying to look at it, is maybe he's trying to make an aggressive play at home. Either way, the ball gets by him. It's into the outfield. And again, since there's pinch running, it was Taylor scores easily, Stevenson ties the game easily, and then Rendon sprints home, scores easily. And Soto's caught in a rundown, but at this point, no one really cares at that point. He's so fired up, the crowd's so fired up, and all of a sudden, again, this is Juan Soto, who's 20 years old, who a year and a half ago was barely above 2 years ago, started out in low A ball, was hurt, went to low A ball last year, was promoted to high A, then quickly decided it was time for double A, and was just so good. And came up to the majors at 19, and it was already an established major leaguer by the end of his 19-year-old season. He was performed quite well in the major leagues for as well as any 19-year-old ever has. Age 20, followed that up and got likely the biggest hit of his career. So Juan Soto ties the game. And the irony of that is they beat Hader. Who, again, his pitch count was in the mid-20s at that point. So does he go back after the ninth? Who knows? I don't know. He would have been a very, very tiring 6-out save. Might not even have been available in Los Angeles, but who knows? That doesn't matter at this point now. But Juan Soto gets the biggest hit of his life and possibly in Nationals history. And I'm trying to think of the biggest postseason hits in Nationals history. Obviously, there's that Jason Worth walk-off home run. I think it was a 12-13 pitch at bat against the Cardinals Game 4. Took them to Game 5. We know the result of that. Might have been more known if they win that series and maybe they go on a deep playoff run. Another big hit that was so that I'm trying to think of is Bryce Harper tying the game and then against the Cubs, 2-run home run. They're down 3-1 on the verge of being down 2 games to none, and Ryan Zimmerman hits that go-ahead 3-run home run. Those look to be critical, but they couldn't finish that series too. So this Soto hit, it won them a series. It gave them the lead. Now, granted, it was maybe a 3-run single. That's an error. Definitely 3-run single. That's an error. Should have only been a single. And the game's tied, so who knows? There could be what ifs. What would have Asdrubal Cabrera done? What would have happened? There could have been a bunch of what ifs. What if? And this might be a discussion down the line. You could do a whole episode. What if Trent Grisham didn't misplay the ball, and the game is tied? What happens next? What happens? Who knows what happens? Who knows what happens? We'll never know. But regardless, for a kid like Trent Grisham, who was called up in August, was playing since Christian Yelich was hurt, was basically Yelich's replacement. At the time I was fired up and celebrating, but look, you gotta feel bad for the kid. You gotta feel bad for the kid who, again, and who knows how well known this play will be, especially if it starts potentially a deep playoff run. But all of a sudden, you may be more famous now than you were before the game, and not for a good reason, for a reason like that. So obviously, yes, I feel bad for the kid. But again, that hit, in my opinion, is the biggest hit in Nationals history, certainly postseason history. Just completely change that season, since they're 4 outs away from elimination. And then you follow it up. Obviously, Robles makes the catch, which was a ball he kind of had to run. Kind of caught in the gap. There's not many balls that he doesn't catch. And that's it. The Nationals win. They celebrate and they go on to the NLDS, and for the Brewers, their season ends once again earlier than they anticipated, for sure. So that was a great game. That was a great game. Just again, were there times where I thought the season was over? You know what I was trying to be? I was trying to be optimistic. So I was trying to think, like they're putting in Steven Strasburg. They're not worried about Game 1 in LA right now. They're not worried about that right now. So now all of a sudden, they've won that series. And this could spark momentum for them, since their season was certainly on the line. It's not now. They're still alive. They're going to Los Angeles. And for the Brewers, I think they're in a similar situation that they were last year. We know Yelich is going to be back. I think he's under control for something like, I think 2 years after this. So I think the Brewers do have a good future. It would be interesting to see what their starting rotation looks like next year. since I have no idea what it would have looked like against the Dodgers. I really don't. And how the Brewers come back from this. Do they win the Central again next and go back to the playoffs 3 years in a row? I certainly think they can, but again, their season's over. They're the first team out. Nationals advance, and we'll see what type of run this is. Since again, if you want to win the World Series, you have to do things what they did last night, especially in the 8th inning. Zimmerman getting that single, broken bat single, sure. Maybe it's just a bat shatter and it's just an easy routine pop-up. But not that time. That time was a hit. Soto ties the game. Then, they take huge advantage of a misplay by Trent Grisham. They have the lead now. And what they struggled to do in the past, games that they should have won, they converted the save when they needed it to advance. So they've done that so far. Something like, Scherzer doesn't have it. Strasburg picked him up. Told Max not to worry about it. Offense came back, did their thing. It wasn't an easy win. And certainly, there was times where I thought they may lose. I definitely thought they were going to lose when it came down to Hader. I was nervous, since more times than not, Hader converts the save. Happened to be a blown save there. So does this starter run? In order to win the World Series, you have to beat hard teams. So does this propel a run? And how deep do they go? That'll be interesting to find out. So it was a great game. It was very exciting. They are still alive. They'll play the Dodgers. I'll talk about that more. I'll try to get that in tomorrow. So that's all I have for this game. Up next, in just a few minutes, I will preview tonight's American League wildcard game between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Oakland A's. So thank you for listening to this edition, and we will see you next time.